anyone who is here who feels they can answer a question, I'm sure will. But if we treat it as a discussion, if you want to ask something or say something, if you'd like to raise your hand, we'll make a start. Yes.
Why has that particular site been chosen?
So the question is, why has that particular site been chosen? Do you want to answer that, Pete?
Yes. Well, I hope someone in the room knows more than I do, but I understood that they wanted it in that region, and where they cited it is where they were allowed to put it. But it could have been anywhere in that locality had other landowners wanted it there, I think. But I'm going to add to that because perhaps it relates to where the temporary mast went for the festival. I don't know. Was that in a similar place?
I don't know.
The question was about the site in Hay, right?
There are so many places it could be. Why does it have to be?
Fiona, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I don't know why that site was chosen, but I do know we had a report from Brecon Beacons National Parks when they'd made the decision to put it there, and it stated that they'd previously approached a farmer who lives just above. I think they probably wanted a greater height, and that farmer refused to have it on his land. So I suppose they must have moved down.
I think actually I'd like... Oh, yes. I'll come to you just to finish the question. Of course, one of the reasons a site gets chosen is because the company that wants to put the mast there is offering a sum of money to do so.
Hi, yeah, just continuing from your question. I've had a look at the BNNP report about what happened and the reasons for their decision, and it does deal with the alternative sites. And it's something, obviously, that we all need to think about. There's 5 other sites that they thought about. Do you want me to tell you about that? Or?
Would you like to use a microphone?
Yeah.
Sorry, my name's Claire, and I was given the report from Gareth, our councillor. I just want to make sure that I'm referring to the right report. It's the BNNP report from the meeting of the March the 13th. Yes. So I've looked through the report and broken it down. So they considered mast sharing with another mast to the northwest, and this was discounted as it was too far away from the town to provide the coverage necessary. I'm not clear from the report how much radius was required, so maybe that's something we need to look at. I mean, I suppose that they've made the decision that mast to the northwest wasn't sufficient, but do we look behind that? I don't know. So that's the first place. They secondly considered using the larger buildings like Kilverts and the Swan, and they discounted that as unsuitable because of the character and the nature of the buildings. And I suppose also from our perspective, we don't want it on Kilverts or the Swan either, neither do they. So that one goes out. Thirdly, locating the mast at Wye Valley Business Park, and that was discounted as it was on low ground and the coverage was limited. Now that to me seems like that was a possibility actually, but I don't know how close that would then be. Would that be even worse? Wye Valley Business Park. Certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, the other direction.
On the way to Summerhill. Okay, so that would be further away, wouldn't it, and affect less inhabitants. Sorry?
A lot lower.
It's a lot lower, and that's what they were saying. It's lower ground, and therefore the coverage would be limited. But I don't know how much coverage there would be. How limited would it be? Would it be less by 80% or 60%? Or so that I think we could look into as well. Now this was the point that the gentleman mentioned. It was Peter, was it? Pete. That they did think about locating the mast at Green Pit and Oakfield Farms, and those owners obviously declined, and I think I would decline as well myself if I was them. That was thought about. And then number 5, and this is the one I'm a bit confused about, locating at Greenfield Industrial Estate. The landowner did not want to sterilise the lower part of the estate to impact on tenant or future employment use. I don't know where the Greenfield Industrial Estate is. That's next to it, so that's out from out. And then on balance, they decided that there was no satisfactory alternative.
I think Greenfield.
That is the one.
Is actually
is
the one.
in.
Is it? I think it's actually. Isn't it part of the Greenfield?
I think so.
Yeah.
So it must be next door then?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the one, but next door. So I don't know if there are other alternatives apart from those, but it's on that basis that they said, oh, we've gone through all the different alternatives and this is what we've thought about. I mean, is there any other land that's suitable? That's something that we need to...
I think the one you said about the northwest.
The northwest mast.
I think that must be Clyro Mast,
I think so.
which already has other phone providers. Is it O2? Well, this one is O2, but Vodafone, I think, is...
And Orange.
Yes.
And Orange.
Yes.
And they discounted that as it was too far away.
Well, it works for Vodafone and Orange anyway, doesn't it? So how can it be
that's why I
too
don't
far
understand. How can it be too far away?
Okay,
So I agree with that.
so the point that was made, I don't know if everybody heard that, that...
Sorry, the mast that we can all see at Clyro, they have Vodafone and Orange from that mast. So I can't see how that is too far away, because anyone who's got Vodafone, it works in Hay, so I can't see why they're saying it's too far away. That just seems strange. Unless it's for, is it G4, does that make a difference? But
4G, yeah.
4G,
4G,
yes,
yeah.
4G.
Okay. Are you done?
I think I'm done. It's just that I'm really surprised that Fiona, that you didn't have the opportunity as town councillors to respond to these particular points. I'm shocked, actually. Yeah.
Well, that is a point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, the lady there.
I think, sorry, just as the point, I think as David, I think the Y Valley one that was referred to, I think that is the one actually I have on the presentation, that's Y Valley business park.
Yeah, that's
Landline, yes, that's right. But going back to the fact of these ones on Clyro, does anybody know what happened when the plan was put in for the ones still on the Clyro mast? I don't recall if there was any, were there any repercussions in Clyro about it?
Because that would have been Clyro Community Council, we weren't notified of that at all.
No.
And they are...
National Parks Council when that was...
It's out of the national park. Clyro is out of the national park. Also, they've been there quite a long time, those mobile phone providers. So
But were there any concerns expressed?
I doubt it. I don't know, but I would doubt it because it's in a very isolated place. There aren't very few people living around it. And because they've been there for quite a while, it probably was before people were alerted to the fact that there were concerns about, as I remember, I think it was 2009, there was a report that the British government actually acknowledged in a report that mobile phone use should be restricted for children because of damage to the brain. Possible damage to the brain.
Don't you think really, going back to the national parks, because by what we've seen today, it says that radiation from these masts going down to a certain level. But surely the National Park, with all these so-called experts there, should realise that putting the masts where they're talking about putting it, is going to be objections to it. And so therefore, I reckon the National Parks are the main people to blame, because they've got the experts, and they should make out a rule of how far away from human beings those masts should be put.
Fiona, do you want to answer that?
Well, I think, if I could just say the Town Council point of view, National Park said they consulted the Town Council. They actually sent the planning application in. We sent back, in all the time I've ever been on the Council, we'd never before sent this in. We said we were making the strongest possible objection to it. The next thing we heard is it had been passed. That's not consultation. That's imposing and paying lip service to the process. We were then told that they passed it because their health and safety executive, well, we implied that the health and safety executive had said that there was no problem with this. Since heard that the health and safety executive look at the construction of the mast. is not with the after effects, it's just with putting up the mast.
Yeah.
So, they're not looking at the long-term effects at all, as far as we can see.
I'd like to add to that, actually. This is the way I have come to interpret some of the things that Gareth Ratcliffe, the county councillor, has been explaining about the National Parks process, because he was a county council representative on the National Parks Committee at the time. And so he actually was the only... What happened was, Hay Town Council was the statutory consultee. All of the Town Council opposed it. So planning officers at the National Park were bound to take that decision to committee themselves within the National Park. They couldn't make the decision themselves. The committee looked at the objections, and because they were on health grounds are not a material consideration as far as they are concerned. They are working within health and safety executive guidelines, and were also advised, probably by their legal department, that should they refuse on these grounds, if they should refuse the planning permission, the applicant could go for judicial review, and they would therefore have to pick up, the National Parks would pick up the cost of that, should they lose. So that would be a strong reason for the National Parks Committee not to refuse the planning at the time.
Yes. I live 150 yards from the proposed place. I have 3 small children. I was not consulted or informed of this.
I can answer
As
that.
far as I'm considered, it was pushed under the carpet when the Tesco thing was going through. So I'm really concerned. I don't know. No one can answer. Is it a health concern for my children or not?
I think that's a decision that you yourself have to make after you have informed yourself as far as you can regarding the research available now, and there is a lot more than there has been.
The overwhelming thing is they don't know.
No, exactly.
There are studies that say it's not affecting people's health, and others, there's brain tumours. What was the Sun's front headline on the next day that the mobile mast was proposed, that some guy had died from a brain tumour from their mobile phone? I don't know, but this is very, very concerning.
Roger.
I'm sorry, I've got to go very short.
This needs to be answered.
Right. Well,
and sorry,
Yeah, no.
150 yards, why didn't I know? I really want to know about this.
Well, I'm sorry, I've got to go in about 10 minutes or so, but I'm very impressed by the turnout here tonight, and also by the way in which the National Park have dealt with this matter. Can I just put on the record, I'm a member of the Science and Technology Select Committee in the House of Commons, and take a particular interest in risk and risk perception, and how the public can deal with these very difficult issues that confront them when they are faced with technologies that are not very difficultly, with great difficulty understood by the public, but not even actually well understood by the scientific community as well. I'd just like to say one or two things about the presentation we've received, because there was nobody there to contradict what the lady was saying, and I think there are some contradictions. I mean, first of all, the World Health Organization report that she referred to was actually about mobile phones, not about masts. And I know somebody came on afterwards and said, well, it's all the same electromagnetic radiation, just the same as the magnetic radiation from this microphone, and particularly from those wireless bits of machinery just there. And we're all affected by it. Every time there's electricity transmission through wires, that's putting out electromagnetic radiation. Every time you watch the television, it's coming at you. Probably the television signal itself, but probably very weak, is of the same order. And so these things are very, very difficult indeed. If I could try to explain the process by which this decision was taken, the applicant is asked to sign a declaration that the radiation produced, and it's non-ionizing radiation, that means it's not radioactive radiation, it's electromagnetic radiation, falls within the safety limits as designated by, believe it or not, somebody even worse than the Health and Safety Executive, a European directive and regulation which determines what is safe and what is not safe. If the applicant signs that declaration, then the planning authority, whether it's a national park or Powys County Council, can't actually take the health issues into account because they've already been dealt with by the applicant signing it off. So I don't mind taking questions, but
sorry,
to you.
can I just ask a question though? I've heard that if it's within 200 yards of the house, that you actually have got to be consulted.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm a little bit concerned about is how the National Park dealt with this application. And I think with these very sensitive issues, probably the National Park says we will consult everybody whose land or property adjoins the application.
And mine is immediately, it is at the end of my driveway.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that I think it would be more prudent of the National Park, because of the sensitivity of these issues and because of the unknown effects of this sort of stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that colloquially. But no, that's me. That it would be better to consult more widely, because it would give the public more confidence.
I find it fascinating that they can sign it off. I mean, if that's true, look at the end there. No mobile phone company has public liability insurance. I find that absolutely staggering. The two don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know.
No.
I mean, all I would say to you is, O2 is obviously not just a national company, it's an international company. And if anybody could prove that they've acted negligently or without due regard to safety, I mean, it would have not only a huge effect on its reputation, but I mean, it would be sunk financially, So, I mean, these things are, sorry.
So, could I ask you to comment on the fact that I think the EU legislation that you referred to was signed off in 1999, which is a long time ago.
No, that's the point that I'm going to try to come to, is that the World Health Organization, in part of that report that was highlighted here, said they were going to bring a more conclusive or more final report out in 2012. And I just think that we should be asking the Welsh Assembly government to actually, set this criteria of signing off the application, that should be considered with the more up-to-date information that we're receiving on the danger of these things.
Absolutely. Emma.
But they have these health and safety guidelines on certain emissions of individual things, but this sort of stuff is known to be cumulative, and we're in a high radon area, which is already other health implications. So do they ever take into account the cumulative overall effect on the town that it's contributing to, not just it in itself?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not technically well versed enough to answer that question. All I would say is, actually, if you're in London, you're probably never more than a quarter of a mile, half a mile away from a mast,
Which is why we're not in
London. These things are, I declare another interest. I'm approached very often by mobile phone operators, because I do sometimes complain, and you're probably going to give me a terrible grief now, but I do sometimes complain that we don't have good mobile phone coverage in this constituency, and I particularly think about some main roads. And a friend of mine had an accident up by Storey Arms, for instance, before the coverage was improved there, and ran off the road at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and no traffic about, and she just had no contact really. She wasn't very well because she was in the accident. And, you know, I think at this sort of time in our lives, we expect in those circumstances to be able to contact emergency services. But can I just say one thing to finish on that, is that when I do talk to them, I say, yeah, well, there's a road between Brecon and Merthyr, there's the one between Sennybridge and the Swansea Valley or whatever, but can you please be a little bit more sensitive when you do cite these masts? And what seems to me so completely crackers about this particular one is there must have been better places to cite it that would give equal coverage. You know,
and we're already well
and at
served.
the same time, you know, ensure that you people are more content then with the, you know, with the sighting of the mast, you know, and it just seems to be extraordinarily insensitive, even if they believe that it doesn't have any effect at all.
Roger,
Sorry,
we appreciate you being here. We know you're dashing off. But can I get a word in before you do?
Sorry, go on.
I think with your comparing cell phone radiation with a microphone is not us into a false sense of security.
Well,
I think that if we want an improved signal, which many of us do, we have to wonder at what cost that is going to be.
Yeah.
And a mass near a school is not the cost I want to pay. And lastly, before you go, I understand that in the House of Commons there's a vote coming up on whether all national parks in the UK should relax their planning restrictions for mobile phone masts. And I'm urging you now to vote against that, because otherwise we'll have a forest of masts across our national parks.
Yeah, I don't think that's quite true. In Westminster, thank goodness we don't have responsibility for Welsh national parks.
You're right.
That's the responsibility of the Welsh Assembly. I would say that I will look out for that, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, there are changes in planning. I mean, for instance, and I was talking this afternoon, and a long time since I was deep in planning matters, but as I understood it, anything below, outside a national park, any mast below 15 metres didn't need planning permission at all. In a national park, I think it was below 10. But that, you know, if it's on that sort of issue, then certainly I'll be making my contribution to the debate, even if it affects England and not Wales.
Thank you, Roger. And I'm really pleased to hear you've got all of this stuff at the top of your brain.
Well,
thank you.
A little bit of it. Take it anyway. And, you know, if anybody also wants to see me, but I think the National Park, with these sort of issues that have wider community concern, should consult a little bit more widely than just with the immediate neighbours.
150 yards, yes, I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Can you give us a tip before, just on the way out, Roger? It's 6 months since the permission was granted, so the judicial review time is up. Where do you suggest is the most effective place to hit with this campaign? Is it Europe? Where?
Well, I mean, I know my colleague William Powell has been talking to some people about this matter. What it seems to me is probably legally the National Park have followed the right procedure with this. There is the issue about wider consultation, but there's also the issue about whether, in light of better understanding of the effect of electromagnetic radiation, whether the Welsh Assembly should review their instructions to planning authorities about how they should deal with these matters. And just to say about judicial review, it's terribly expensive. I mean, I would always advocate somebody goes to the Ombudsman rather than to judicial review, because I found the Ombudsman very pragmatic and practical about these issues.
Sorry, one last question.
Yeah.
I've got to ask it.
Yeah.
You said about public consultation. I am on its doorstep.
Yeah.
Why did I not know about it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as I understand it, I mean, this is always a contentious issue because the National Park set up a consultation scheme, and if they said, well, we'll do everybody within a mile, it would be so enormous as to be very expensive. Yeah, no, I'm not saying. What I'm saying is they probably say something like only landowners or property owners who actually join the site But what I'm saying is, with these matters, perhaps it would be better to expand it.
Can I propose that needs to be changed?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll write to the National Park on that matter, and I'll report back to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm sorry I've got a dash.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. As we understood it, the planning application was adjoining neighbours were informed, and because of where the Mast is sited, the only real adjoining neighbour is the landowner himself. But there was.
It's within my visual sight. It is at the end of my driveway.
And there was a notice on Forest Road close to the site, and there was a notice in.
It was very, very confusing. Yeah. Actually, if you read it, it was very, very confusing.
So you did read it?
Yes, yeah. And it did not, to me, say there was a huge mobile phone mast coming up there. There was a development on the site.
Right. Which you're used to.
Pardon?
How big is the proposed one?
I don't know.
12.5 metres.
It's not the aesthetics, it's the health implications, isn't it? Really, I think we're all joined on that.
So, does anybody else got a query or something they want to say?
Just a very small practical issue. I think that the notification to immediately adjoining landowners and the tiny notice on a post at the site, and a presumably very small notice in the Brecon and Radnor Express were the only statutory requirements apart from the council consultation. I've seen 2 dates mentioned for the publication of the notice in the B&R.
Yeah.
I just wondered if anybody checked that it did actually appear on the page in the newspaper, either on the 15th or the 21st of December.
Okay.
Both not good times to get people's attention for something like this.
So
it might just be worth checking that it did actually.
Okay. But for those of you who couldn't hear, the query that Simon made is did anybody actually see the planning notification in the Brecon and Radnor Express, which actually were just before Christmas last year, when you might not be looking for that sort of thing anyway.
We were all concerned with the supermarket at exactly that time.
Yes.
So yellow laminated post-its on lampposts don't really get your attention, do they?
Okay,
they will now.
Can I just say something though? You said that everyone was concerned about the supermarket at the time, so I would have thought that people would have been more inclined to see a yellow notice and be looking to see what it says. So are we sure that the yellow notices were prominent? You know, because I'm surprised that no one mentioned this. No one
until 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Bob.
So we didn't get an answer from Mr. Williams as to how we stop it, did we?
Yeah. Well, I think it's him towards the ombudsman is the way to go.
I would like to see an action
being
taken that there has to be some sort of public consultation within a certain yardage. I cannot believe that I have not been told about it.
I might be able to answer that for you.
Let Bob.
Do I understand that you rent the bungalow?
I rent it, yes.
Then the likelihood is that the owner will have been notified.
I think
So that's probably what happened. Cause,
I've been there for 10 years.
Yeah, but I know that one of the places that was looked at for putting this mast would have been Bernard Price across the road, and he refused to put it there.
His sister, I suppose.
Sister-in-law, I think, yeah. But there's one other thing that, or 2 things I need to say. First off, as you know, I'm a trustee of Hadskill, right? And Hadskill met last night, trustees meeting, and we are concerned as a sporting association, sports and community association, about the siting of this mast. That's the first thing you need to know. Secondly, I have been informed, and I don't know whether it's true, there might be people in this room that can answer this for me, that an application has also been made to Hay Church to have tower mounted on there. Does anybody know that?
I've heard that.
I also have heard that.
Church, yes.
I think that was about WiMAX putting a cloud of Wi-Fi, sort of high-speed Wi-Fi in
I don't know. And just so you all know where I stand, I am against this mast because I had 2 of my family members down with brain tumours last year. It's not something I want to see another member of my family or anybody's family go through. It's an appalling experience to have to witness.
So we've got suddenly got a raft of hands. The lady at the back.
Yes, hi. I'd just like to say that there seems to be an assumption that O2 have got a right to erect a mast in Hay, and we're going to be helpful to find a nice site for them, other than the school. Well, I'd like to say I don't think they've got any right to assume that they can have a mast here and cause problems. So please don't assume that you've got to find a nice home for them. Yeah. You haven't.
It's just a business, yeah.
And Claire, did you have your hand up again?
Hi, yeah. We're just talking about direct action, and I think the key point is we've got to contact our MPs. We've got to contact the relevant assembly members. I put up there, it's very easy for you to log in. You don't know all your details. Just go www.writeto them.com, put your postcode in, and you tell all the relevant people. Unfortunately, I'm Cusop down the road at Michael Girls in Hay School, so these ones here, this is the sort of sheet that would come up. You just click on there, and you can literally write there and then, click send, and off it goes. You don't even have to put anything in the post box. That's obviously if you've got access to the internet, which you may not want to. But that's an easy way of doing it, and that's the key point here, because I think for me, this is the one that I'm really concerned about that's up here, and I found that very helpful because I've been trying to find out about these ICN IRP guidelines, because on this basis, Brecon said that effectively no concerns about health because they're going to comply with these guidelines. Well, it doesn't seem to me that these guidelines offer the safety. So we need to write to our MPs, write to your members of Assembly and say we need reassurance that those guidelines are up to date and they are going to protect us.
But those guidelines there only deal with the heat transmitted by these equipment.
And that's it. But when you look at the report from planning, they are relying on those guidelines.
Exactly, it's crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
Liz?
Can I just say that I know that in the London Parliament, if you write a letter, as opposed to sending an email, the Member of Parliament is obliged to answer. And if you ask a question, that is the most important thing to do because he's then got to answer it. So think of a good question. But I don't know if it applies in Wales that they only have to answer if you've written a letter.
I just wanted to ask one last question.
Yeah.
Who here feels that broadband and Wi-Fi and mobile connections should be improved? Do we support that or not? I.e., should the mast be moved or do we not want it at all?
Well, I think broadband should be improved, but I don't necessarily think we need to get it via Wi-Fi means.
Yes.
Would that not be quite an important part of this route, is to decide where we stand and what we stand for? Do we want it gone completely or do we want it moved? I don't know, but if we're going to take action, what action is it we are going to take?
Surely the action we need is to prevent this mast from being
Prevent it from being here.
Well, that's what we're concerned about, isn't it? I mean, we all use mobile phones, the vast majority of us, and we're unsure about the technology. While there's some unanswered questions, surely the last place you put a mast is next to a school.
Absolutely.
So, can we prevent it? It's gone through now. Are we going to, practically, are we going to be able to prevent it?
That's a very, very good question, and I don't think that anybody here can actually answer that.
Could we start off with some freedom of information requests to Brecon Beacons National Park about all of the paperwork to do with this mast to begin with? And let's see if there are any gaps in their actions and consultations and all the rest of it. And at the same time, make a start with the Ombudsman, because I can't imagine they're ever moving very quickly.
What do you think we should ask the Ombudsman?
It'll take a couple of weeks to get FOI stuff out of Brecon Beacons National Park. And between then and now, just find out the procedures and research other cases that have gone to Ombudsman, and it shouldn't be too difficult to find out on what basis the Ombudsman found for the objectors to the masts, and then see if we can stack up that information. I know this is very vague of me, I know, but it just seems to be the way to get some hard facts. If we go at them with, we don't want it, but we don't have any evidence, nobody's got any evidence. But in fact, if we start trying to gather information, and we have to start now.
Claire?
So I'm just responding to you talking about other cases, and this report, is it public knowledge, this report, surely?
Yeah.
So we've got a copy of the report which goes through all the material we've been talking about today, and it does refer to a recent appeal decision for an 18-metre tower, and effectively, because they complied with the ICNIRP guidelines for public exposure, then it was the appeal was disallowed. So they're relying on that particular decision. And I think the problem we face is that it's ultimately going to be okay whilst those guidelines are in place. So unless you overturn those guidelines, and the Welsh Assembly and the MPs say those guidelines, we shouldn't be following those anymore because they're too old, and these are the guidelines we should be looking at. I think we're stuck, even if they have a follow due process, which I don't think necessarily they have, especially from what we're hearing. Ultimately, then all that will happen with the jail application, which we're out of time for anyway, is it just goes back, follow due process, and we're stuck with these blinking
we'll use our children as dummies to test it in the meantime.
That 2012, that new report that was coming out, does anybody know when it's due to come out? Is it imminent? Has it just come out?
Early next year, I've been told.
Oh.
I think there is a consensus appearing, which is that the guidelines obviously are A, inadequate, and B, out of date. Yes. And when you consider how fast the technology has moved forward, 4 years ago, well, actually, even 4 years ago, not everybody had a mobile phone. 10 years ago, the fact that I was emailing someone was quite extraordinary. And if you think that these guidelines existed before that, really there's a strong case for writing to your MPs, your members of the European Parliament, where whatever Roger may say about European EU safety law, actually it's a lot tighter than our own here. I understand that in Europe the levels of radiation allowed are much lower. To ask that health and safety guideline for such devices are updated and made more appropriate for the level of usage that is around us all the time now.
It's a realistic question. It's a realistic question.
Yeah. I want to let Bob ask or say what he's got to say, but I also want to ask Sarah, Pops here, and Martina, who have been behind this meeting and have done most of the research that you're looking at today, if they want to say anything. So if we just talk to Bob, and then perhaps Sarah, if you'd like to say something.
Mine was just a very quick thought. We're talking about challenging the planning procedure. Why don't we write to Orange's managing director and ask him, O2 or whoever it is, and put forward that hope he's able to have broad shoulders and take on the liability of them.
It's a good question, yes.
Don't O2 sponsor the Hay Festival?
I think that new report coming out early next year, by the way, sounds like a very good case for delaying the decision, asking through the Ombudsman or direct to Brecon Beacons. There's a very good reason to hold off until next year for the new guidelines, and that might be it.
But perhaps there ought to be a moratorium on putting masts in populated areas until they've done that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I think you guys are missing the point. O2 is owned by Telefonica. Telefonica is one of the, they're geniuses, they're brains. They recruit from Google, Apple. You can't challenge them. You try, you'll fail. There's no way you can challenge them. If they've gone through all that, they've gone through every bit of legal paperwork. Your best bet, if you want to make your
It's not to address any of these, but it's to make this public. So his point about being near a school, that's your strongest argument. But how can you make that message across? You go viral, but you can go to things like the BBC and make this public. Just publicize it. That's the strongest way.
Good point.
If you address all these legal implications or try to change their guidelines, you're dreaming. It's never going to happen. No. You guys can't make it happen.
It's already been rubber stamped.
Yeah, exactly. The only way you can do. I mean, O2 do not want negative publicity. I know Telefonica quite well, but I don't know O2. I know they don't want negative publicity. They hold too much to their positive publicity, their public image. The O2 signal sucks here. Yeah, fine. I know that. They can find many different ways. But the one thing they don't want is negative publicity. The minute you start publicizing, if anybody has any contacts in the BBC, this is the way you go.
We've got Tam who's videoing this all tonight. This is all going to go on Hay on TV. So
that doesn't make it.
Yeah, but from Tam's got contacts in the BBC, doesn't she?
I mean, that's the way to make it. Watchdog. What about Watchdog? They've got Watchdog Daily now. What about going one step further?
I mean, you must remember that Hay is the centre of the world. And it always has been.
Well, ever since the book.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to say something, please?
Only really that I'm really pleased the point was raised that actually the standards themselves need to be questioned. For example, the Reflex report showed DNA damage in rats at levels way below our safety levels, and Austria, I think, has the lowest levels in the world, or certainly in Europe. I just hope that we can approach this creatively. I mean, there has to be a better answer than putting on a mast up when we're already exposed to too much radiation. I don't know. I'm really pleased we've got the turnout we have. I don't know. Do you want to speak, Pete?
I think Martina was invited to speak next.
I'm not sure that I have much more to add. I'm obviously very concerned because I'm one of the afflicted people who really cannot cope with the radiation, and this was one corner of the world which seemed to have a little less, and therefore I could, have a bit of purpose and not just be like a vegetable sort of blah, 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 which is what I have experienced when I lived in a city before. It was, it seems shocking that there seems to be no exemption made for preserving some environment where actually people who want to leave cities need a bit of breath of fresh air, have a space to go to and breathe. I think there are ways we can get wired internet, we can get lifelines. In a sense, obviously I cannot have a mobile phone because it makes me extremely sick. I haven't had one for 7 years. I still barely just now live, but I live, It's obviously, I don't feel that sacrificing our children and our own health for the profits of the companies is a way to go, really. And looking at, for example, New South Wales guidelines in Australia, which have got 5 orders of magnitude less and have to be pumped into people, it makes quite sobering thinking.
I think, if you'll forgive me, I want to say something which I feel about this, which is that all this is actually only driven by commercial concerns. Mm-hmm. It's not driven by need. Maybe to an extent, if you can't get O2, you need O2 signal, maybe. But it's not, it's a purely commercial opportunity that O2 are taking. Mm. It's an aggressive commercial opportunity to compete with Orange and Vodafone, because that's the way they all operate. And if you think back in history, we lived with coal for 250, 300 years, and the ill effects of coal. We lived with cigarettes, smoking, which, some of us still do, but, it's a choice that we make ourselves. In the 16th century, it was considered good for your health, and that went right on up until about 60 years ago when questions started to be asked, and by which time the government was completely embedded with the tobacco company, collecting huge amounts of taxes and from the tobacco companies. But even so, we've eventually kind of pushed it back in this country. Those tobacco companies are still very active, poisoning people in third world countries. But to me, the biggest insult of all is that, okay, so the government makes huge revenue out of tobacco, makes huge revenue out of alcohol and other drugs, but actually they let Vodafone get away with huge tax arrears. So there's not even an excuse there. But no, it's a purely commercial thing, and I think there has to come a point in our existence now, in this highly market-driven economy that we live in, where we have to say market forces are not always serving us best.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And for me, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Pete wants to say something else, and then can I just say that maybe we have the idea here as well, and that is, especially if O2 are going to sponsor the festival next year, with the amount of press that land in Hay for the festival, that's just the time. But the campaign would have to start now. We'd have to say, okay, and this is the light-hearted side of it is, Hay has already banned the Kindle. Now we're going to ban O2 if they go ahead with this mast, and we try to get it viral. And in fact, what we're aiming for is to have a serious campaign, anti-O2, promised now so that they can worry about it, but in fact, with it actually aimed at next year's festival, saying, O2, if you go ahead with this mast, you are heading for a shitstorm, excuse my language.
Love it.
And that might help.
Get Orange to sponsor the festival, I'm sure they'd be all for it.
Right, now, will you... part of the decision to have a meeting was to gauge public opinion. We have our mayor here. Can we let our mayor know what our opinion is about this mobile phone mast near the school? Is it a good idea?
No.
Is it a bad idea?
Yes.
Is it a very bad idea?
Yes. We don't want it.
Have you got the message?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, got the message from this audience.
Yes,
I knew
absolutely.
you were.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Hey, sorry. Can I just say something? If you want to get their attention right now, tomorrow, every company has a Facebook page. Okay.
Yeah.
And Facebook is one of the most powerful things you can do. If all of you go on Facebook tomorrow and you all go to their wall and you post something negative about the mast being there endangering the children, I'll bet you anything you'll get their strong attention.
Will you stay in touch as well, please? Because you're saying good stuff.
I've done it with Orange.
Okay.
I
I think we've established that we don't want the mast near the school. No, let's have safe technology. We have safe aeroplanes. We have safe cars. Let's have safe mobile phone technology. Yeah? And there are a group of scientists who made the Sullerton report who tell us how it can be made safe. And will governments listen to them? No.
Because the mobile phone companies are cozying up to politicians at the same time.
Yes.
Those big companies are running the politicians. There's a list at the back for your email address or phone number. Please don't go away without letting us know how we can stay in touch with you if you want to stay in touch with us. That was my last word, Ross.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah.
Is there anyone here from a health centre? That's interesting.
From the health centre.
From the health centre in Torrance Road.
Just a few yards
No.
outside.
The direct action from this fee, I thought you made a really good point, is setting up the Facebook page and letting it. Really, that is going to reach the widest audience. Could you do that?
No, I'm saying I'm just one person. I'm saying if you look,
If everyone did it.
Facebook on average has 229 friends, but they can reach up to 150,000 people
Yeah, that is
just from
a
those
really,
229
really good
people.
point, I think.
But when
And
you
that
go
is
on
using
their post,
social media or Wi-Fi, to get to the masses.
if you go on their page and you post something, all of your friends see it, right? So that's 220 whatever people. So what I'm saying is that that propagates everything, and companies today, because I'm used to working with all these people, companies today rely on Facebook. It's one of their key ways of getting their message, communicating, getting immediate reaction from the public, etc., generating business, promotions, all those things. So when you go on their Facebook and you post negative things, but not just complaining about how you haven't been consulting or this or that, or saying about the ICNIRP guidelines, but you just go with one message, and repeat that one message about children, because everybody wants our children to be all right. They're our future. We're going to die in whatever years, but they're our kids, right?
And of course,
those are the people, and everybody will address. It'll make an impact, because kids, everybody wants to protect kids, and rightly so.
But you will have to remember that you must not say anything abusive or rude or defamatory.
Of course not. I mean,
because
you collectively
Facebook
come up
will
with a positive message. Just collectively come up with a positive message and just go out there and put it. Come up with a message.
Please do not jeopardise the safety of our children.
I mean, no, it has to be more. It has to be more concrete. You know, the Mast is being put up within X yards of a school.
How many
yards?
Hang on a sec, because we do have to close, but there are two people here who haven't said anything that need to say something.
Can I just ask, has anybody actually spoken to O2 and said, why aren't you putting your outlet on the Clyro mast with everybody else's?
I think that was addressed in the...
They dealt with it, they said it's not sufficiently close, I think.
But we didn't
Well,
believe
we
it,
already
did
said
we?
it's
Sufficiently close for everybody else. So
Yes,
they're
it's
effectively
too
saying
far away from the town to provide coverage necessary.
But we know that's not true.
Well, it's patchy coverage with Orange, for example, and they obviously want to improve
And,
what the
sorry,
competitors are offering locally.
you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Gentleman's point is, I think the common theme is if you print out these posters, why don't you do the same thing and say go to this Facebook address and type these words in.
Yes. Right. Pete, did you get that? You've given people a kind of pro forma letter and poster. Do you want to develop a pro forma for Facebook?
We've used a poster, haven't we? Is that the one that you meant?
Yeah. But the suggestion is that you produce a suitable pro forma to be posted on Facebook to
Don't
us.
irradiate our children.
But you can't say that.
If people know more about Facebook than I do, will they come and help us?
Yeah, well, it does have to, but as Fiona's point is right, you know, you can't really say that because
they will come back with counter arguments. You need to say, why, as you said before, why are you building it so close to this school?
When there are doubts, about it.
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody in this room know how many metres the proposed Mast site is from the school?
Please.
I'm with you.
Which school?
I've made my best guess from an ordnance survey map of between 300 and 400 yards.
Yeah, that should be about
So
right.
how many metres is that?
That's roughly...
On metres?
About the same.
300 metres. Who's going to do that one for me?
400 metres.
It's the same.
Reflecting back on your video where she did do the bits and pieces, and she said within a few hundred metres.
Yeah.
You're saying 400 metres, so we are in that range.
It's not 400 metres, it's about 300 metres.
300 metres, so we are in the danger zone.
Very much.
I think the consensus across the country and the world is that that mast is too close to the primary school.
Yeah.
But there is another issue as well. You know, whatever people think about the supermarket, we are looking to have a community centre and a new school.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be across the road from this. It's actually taking it even closer to the Mast.
Yeah.
So.
Actually,
Isn't there a plan also? Sorry.
No, you go on.
Just to add to that, isn't there also a plan to put a 90-bed old people's home also in that same patch?
72 bed.
72.
People with reduced immune systems already.
Already a commotion in Swindon about a mast in a park, and everybody is up in arms. And it might be some way of gathering a lot of publicity if we could somehow come in on the heels of that, you know, that two likely causes, you know, might generate a good deal of publicity.
Okay, so I think we probably ought to draw the meeting to a close. And please collect as many of the bits of paper as you feel you can usefully use. And keep in touch with Pete. And please keep in touch with the town council as well.